Hey guys, it's Drea, and welcome to Unfiltered Vines. It is most definitely rosé season. So, with so many rosés on the market, how are you going to find the rosé that you love more than any other? Different colors, beautiful bottle sizes, cans now even. How do you differentiate one from the other? Well, we're gonna start where we always do, on discovery, together, you and me, on what you love and what differentiates a great rosé. But before we get started, don't forget to click now on the subscribe button below so you don't miss a thing or any other episodes of Unfiltered Vines. So rosé was actually the first type of wine that was created. Ancient Greeks had lots of grapes, red grapes, green grapes, black grapes. Grapes aren't really red or white. Anyway, they mixed them all together, stomped them down, and some version of rosé was born. It was only later that they actually started separating out, green grapes, dark grapes, white wines, red wines, that became the wines that we know and love today. Since then, rosé has gone through a couple different phases here in the US. When we used to talk about rosé in the US, we were talking about things like a super sticky sweet white Zinfandel. Luckily for you and me, in the 2000s, Provence rosé, that is rosé from Provence, France, started becoming a thing. And so most of the rosés you'll see on the market today are in fact from France. But there are a couple different things that really differentiate for you different types of rosé. One of those first factors is color, right? So rosés can actually range from an even paler pink than this, all the way to like a darker, kind of almost ruby red, I think of grapefruits, kind of color here. But there are also a couple other factors that differentiate rosé and will make the difference for you on the type of rosés you like. So first things first, pretty much any red grape can be used to make rosé, right? Different varietals, i.e. different types of grapes, make different types of rosé. Each of these grapes, everything from a Cabernet grape to a Pinot Noir grape, each has its own kind of flavor and unique profile. All that is going to come out in your rosé. So, Provence again. In Provence, France, mostly the rosé that we get is a combination of, wait for it, we're off into the world of pronunciations. Mostly Grenache, some Cinsault, some Mourvedre, some Thibaudin, some Sangiovese, see, warned you, and some Carignan grapes that are blended together to create the perfect rosé combination, or pressed, or bled, but we'll get into those in just a minute. In Napa, California, the grapes you'll find will be a little bit different. Mostly rosés from Napa are Pinot Noir, or they're Syrah grapes, Cabernet grapes. In Spain, it might be Garnacha, it might be Carignana, or even Tempranillo grapes. So how do we get to pink? Well, let's start off. Red grapes, these ones are black actually, but darker grapes are actually pretty clear in the middle. The juice that they produce is also pretty clear. This is regardless of whether or not the grape is red or black or green. That juice from inside is always going to be clear. What gives rosé its color is actually the skin of the grape. More specifically, skin contact to that juice inside. So rosé is made in one of three ways, and why you care is because not only are you going to have a change in color, but you'll also have a change in taste depending on how your new favorite rosé is made. So one of these first types of rosé making methods is called limited skin maceration, or in short, limited skin contact. What we're talking about here is, the amount of contact that the skin of the grape is actually having with that juice we just squeezed out of it. Now, most of the rosés that you'll find in your local wine store have been made this way. Why? A couple different reasons. One, the winemaker gets to really control the color, right? The longer the time that the outside skin stays inside of this juice that's been pressed out, the darker your rosé color is going to be. So anywhere from a couple of hours, maybe 3 to 6, to almost 48 hours will give you a difference in color. Now, the longer the skin's soaked, not only do you get that brighter color, but you also get more complexity in your rosé. So let's talk about this one. This is Los Dos, and it's an amazing combination of two very awesome grapes, not often seen together. It's that Grenache I told you about, and also, surprisingly, a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon grapes that were blended together. Now, this rosé comes from the northeastern part of Spain, from a collective of winemakers who are notorious for these interesting blends of two grapes that you don't normally see together. So like I said, because you had some skin contact for a good amount of time here, we're gonna expect, at least I'm expecting, a more slightly complex, a little more mouthful feeling rosé, maybe a little less crisp than you're thinking, and a little bit more savory. But let's check it out and see for ourselves. Also, gotta love the twist cap. We'll talk more about the twist cap in another episode, I promise you. So again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. First thing you wanna do is stick your nose in it. I don't know, that's the first thing I wanna do, because I love the smell of an amazing rosé. This one's got strawberry, maybe. It's the first thing I smell off the top, and I roll it around a little bit, even though you don't really need to that much with rosé, but it's gonna let me smell all the smells that are gonna come off the top here. I also smell a little bit of almost like an icy lemon. I don't know. All of this depends on your nose, right? So don't take my word for it. Go grab your own Los Dos or your own darker rosé and see what you smell. Now, even more important is the taste. Like I said, this is not a super crisp rosé. Definitely something that's a little bit more savory. If you close your eyes, you might not necessarily even know that you're definitely drinking a rosé or a more complicated white, right? If you're looking for something that has a super crisp, super citrusy, this is not gonna be that. This is more of like a rhubarb, maybe like a strawberry. So again, if you're going for these darker rosés, expect more of that red fruit, more of that really interesting combination of flavors. I hate to leave a wine unfinished, but we have more things to get to. The next method of making rosé is a direct press. It's exactly what it sounds like. Grapes are gathered and they are literally pressed all the way down until all of the juice has come out of the grape, right? And what you got is kind of like a soggy skin, kind of like wrinkles, grape wrinkle. And all of that liquid has come all the way out, and mostly it's gonna go directly into the fermentation process, which is part of winemaking, and then it's gonna get to a bottle. What it's not gonna do is sit around with grape skin, because that would, of course, darken the color. So what you get from a direct press is a much lighter rosé. It's also gonna be crisper. It's gonna have a more like refreshing taste. Again, because less skin contact gives you less elements, less complexity. So it's gonna be a lot more refreshing, especially if it's done in some sort of a steel barrel, as opposed to oak, like a steel tank, I should say, as opposed to an oak tank. You're gonna really get a lot of crispness, right? Oak tends to add things like cinnamon and vanilla and spice, right? So when you don't have oak, what you just get is like really clean, like a poof, kind of. Taste-wise, direct press rosé is also gonna have the least amount of acidity, right? So again, really crisp, really refreshing, and we're thinking you're probably gonna get a good amount of citrus coming off of these, maybe a little hint of strawberry. Mostly you're gonna think clean and delicious. So this particular rosé, the Palm, one of my favorites, by Whispering Angel, which many of you may have heard of. So the Palm is actually a sister brand to Whispering Angel, and it's made by the winery Chateau d'Esclans. I'm getting so much better at these pronunciations. So the Pomme, again, is a blend of Grenache and also Cinsault, and Syrah. Okay, it also comes from an appellation in France called the Côte d'Aix en Provence. Say that 3 times fast. So again, the pale pink color is definitely a sign that you have a direct press here, right? As opposed to juxtaposing those 2 colors right there, right? Very easy to tell the difference. I'm expecting something, like I said, clean and a little fruity, a little citrus. Again, living for the twist cap life. Also, could have poured that out, poured it in the same glass. I love a good glass, so I have 2. All right, let's go in for the smell. If you had to compare this one right off the top, there is this scent of almost like confection sugar, or like that sugar that you taste on the top of gumdrops or like lemon drops from childhood. Definitely comment if you like know another like gummy kind of childhood candy that's got that sugar kind of glaze on it, because that's what it smells like off the top. And if I give it a nice little swirl around, remember, no need to swirl. One, I love the swirl. If you like the swirl, but it also opens up some of the flavors for you. Sorry, some of that aroma. Right? All right, let's get into the taste. That is really good. There's almost like a little bit of like a brown sugar taste for me that I taste off the top, which, I don't know, not necessarily maybe one of those things you should taste, but man, is that delicious. Or maybe like a baked apple. Yeah, definitely like a baked apple with like maybe a little bit of like a brown sugar glaze. Not so much a cinnamon or anything like that. Now I'm curious if you've had the Pomme. I want you to tell me in the comments below what you taste, because I'm really curious. This is a wine that's probably a little bit easily findable, so I'm curious to know what people think. And if you've also had Los Dos, I want to hear about that as well. Tell me what you taste in the comments below. Now, the third method of winemaking is actually one that's a little bit more complex. This one's called the Beignet Method. Now, it's used a lot less frequently, right? Probably because it requires a little bit more thought process. Overall, what it really is that a winemaker is actually trying to make a red wine. They're taking red wine grapes and they actually want to make a super powerful, very complex red wine. So they have a lot of grapes, they've put them all together, they've mashed them all together. It's a really deep, really like ruby color is starting to come together, and they pour off some of the liquid minus any of the grape skin, right? And that goes on to make a super concentrated, very like special, complex red wine. But what they've poured off then becomes a very interesting, somewhat more complex rosé. So if you can find a rosé wine that someone has said has been made in the Beignet Method, definitely grab it, because you are going to be in for quite a ride. There's one more type of winemaking for rosé that I actually wasn't going to talk about, but then I thought, duh, it's probably what at least I thought rosé was like when I first had it in terms of how it gets made. And that's really simple. It's mixing, because we all learned this in kindergarten, at least I did. Red plus white equals pink. Yes? Raise your hand on this one. So, not crazy, and if you thought this, totally got it, because again, I did too, that if you mixed a little bit of red wine with a little bit of white wine, you'd end up with a rosé. And this is something that some wineries still do. A couple of different reasons. One, it's really a lot easier to control and to create a specific taste profile, right? If you know you've got a red and it's got A, B, and C qualities, and you've got a white and it's got D, E, and F qualities, and you want all those qualities in rosé, you can decide how much of this, right? You can really be mad scientist with it. You won't actually see this happen a lot in older world, like European wines, because it actually is a no-no. The only time that this sort of blending method is allowed in especially French wines is if you're talking about the king of wines, champagne. You can do what you want with the champagne, blending included. But for rosé in France, no blending allowed. However, New World wineries, California, Chile, Argentina, Australia, no worries there. They'll blend if they want to. So like all wines, rosés can either be dry or they can be sweet, right? Most rosés you're gonna find in your wine store are going to be on the drier side. And when I say dry, all I mean is they're not gonna have like a sweet kind of aftertaste that lingers, right? And if you like that, awesome. But then you probably wanna stick to very specific rosés that are on the sweeter side, right? And you probably wanna find them, like I said, from some New World locations. So you probably want to look for things like pink Moscato, white Zinfandel, white Merlot, right? And you're going to find these again from New World countries. So California, other places in the US, maybe Oregon, you're looking for them in Argentina or Chile or Australia, right? If you're looking for a wine that's drier, but more fruit forward, right? It's going to contain a bunch of different types of grapes again that Grenache, Sangiovese, Syrah, Mourvèdre, Pinot Noir. These are going to be more old world type grapes. You're going to find them French rosés, rosés from Spain, rosés from Italy, right? So feel free to kind of get in there and try, now having a better idea of what makes up your favorite rosé. So whether you like your rosé dry or sweet, with or without bubbles, in a can or in a bottle, it doesn't matter. You should be drinking what you want, because really, we're all about wine on your own terms. So like I said before, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss another episode of all things Unfiltered Vines. This is Drea. I've got my wine. You go get yours. I'll see you soon.